Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson Miller. Coming up on today's program, we're going to be talking about developments throughout the day. Now, on Monday, the People's National Party issued a statement calling on the Auditor General to investigate allegations of breaches and misuse of public funds involving the Ministry of Education and the Caribbean Maritime Institution. According to the opposition leader, Dr. Peter Phillips, said he was aware of issues of cronyism, nepotism and corruption. Earlier today, a statement coming from the office of the Prime Minister, saying he had met with Education Minister Roel Reid regarding, quote, allegations in the public domain. He says in keeping with the principles of good governance, he asked for and was given Mr. Reid's resignation. He also said that Mr. Reid had resigned from the Senate. And let's in fact go to this clip which shows the Prime Minister responding to some questions on the issue in Parliament earlier this afternoon.
Already are calls coming to me as Member of Parliament, parents, as to whether or not this is going to create the opportunity for a postponement of the elections, whether or not this will disturb the rhythm of the ministry.
The Ministry of Education has a very strong bureaucracy. It has a very strong bureaucracy, not in the negative sense, but it has a very strong public administration culture. And therefore, the operations will continue unimpeded, and I'm expecting that the new exams, the PEP, will go off without any difficulty. I will receive a report tomorrow specifically on that.
I'm also concerned, Mr. Speaker, because in the announcement of the Prime Minister that the ministry will now be located at OPM, again, it adds to the matters that ministry has to handle.
Ask the Prime Minister if he would give some indication as to the causes for such immediate action as far as he was concerned.
Once I see that there is a problem that signals a governance issue, a breakdown in supervision and oversight by the minister, then I have to intervene and ensure that those problems are not systemic or deep-rooted, and if they are, to correct them. Our job now as the administration is to ensure that there is no impediment and there is no obstruction and that there is transparency. Action taken today by myself and the minister would strengthen the system of our democracy so that there is transparency.
The Constitution requires that not less than 2 nor more than 4 ministers be chosen from the Senate. In view of the current resignation, there would, I believe, that there is an appointment not just to the Senate, but from the Senate to the Cabinet.
The judgment of whether or not my actions are constitutional would depend on the speed at which I act, because clearly the law have to contemplate intervening events that would determine how fast I could make an appointment, such as appointing someone to the Senate, identifying a minister. So there would be some reasonable time. There's some reason. Whatever is considered reasonable, a court will decide, but it's not something that immediately makes the cabinet unconstitutional.
Okay, first of all, my apologies for the blips in the audio, in the feed you would have been watching, but that's a feed as we get it from Parliament. Just before we go to our guests, though, you'd have heard the opposition leader asking the Prime Minister about the constitutionality of the Cabinet. Earlier this evening, I did speak to Queen's Counsel and former Solicitor General Michael Hilton, and I asked him about that. Let's hear what he had to say.
As of now, the Cabinet is not fully constituted.
And what does that mean in practical terms?
In practical terms, the Prime Minister and the Governor General should move quickly to appoint someone. I wouldn't want to make too much of it because obviously a member of the Cabinet who is a senator, or for that matter, if the Cabinet was only 11, any member may pass away or may resign suddenly. And in the normal course of things, one would expect there to be I would think, not more than days to replace him or her.
Does that mean, though, that at this moment, for instance, Cabinet can't take decisions, in other words?
That's my view.
So before the next Cabinet meeting, the situation would need to be remedied?
Correct.
Former Solicitor General and Queen's Counsel Michael Hilton talking to me on Beyond the Headlines on RJR a little bit earlier on. Okay, lots to get into, so let's start. Daniel Archer, first of all, let's talk about the Prime Minister essentially firing Ruel Reid, asking for his resignation and telling the public that he had asked for his resignation and got it.
I think for me what jumps out is what is so different about his actions now and what transpired with Petrojam. What information did he have that required him to respond with such alacrity? And to see that he's making such a definitive response that said, what has happened requires me to take such immediate steps, suggests to me that there is something brewing. He clearly wants to get ahead of the game as he did not get ahead of Petrojam. But it brings to mind that we are facing a situation where there seems to me that there is this ruling body of corruption, and it's overtaking all the works that the Jamaica Labour Party has seemed to be able to do over the last couple of months. You know, I just realized I was so anxious to jump into the discussion, I actually didn't introduce my panel. My apologies. Daniel Archer, attorney at law and host of the Morning Agenda on Power 106. Robert Morgan with us as well, Director of Communications for the Office of the Prime Minister. Dr. the Reverend Garnet Roper also with us, PNP political commentator, and we asked the PNP for a rep, and they asked Dr. Roper to talk to us, and Dr. Paul Ashley also with us, also attorney, also political commentator. So let me ask Paul Ashley as well, your view on that.
On?
The Prime Minister essentially firing Ruel Reid.
Look here.
Right move, wrong move, too early, too late?
No, look here. The Prime Minister is a very careful and deliberate individual in public life. The Prime Minister would not willy-nilly, just because some allegations have been made in the public space, ask a minister to resign or fire him. It would seem to me that the preliminary investigations undertaken by state agencies have pointed directly to the involvement of the minister, and more importantly, in matters that are very grave and likely to be criminal, for the Prime Minister to be forced at this particular point in time to take this urgent and, let's say, drastic action.
Hold on. What the Prime Minister said is that the minister's resignation will ensure that any investigation into matters of concern will not be impeded by his presence or oversight of the ministry. Because the first thing people would say is, hold on, CTOC is there, Auditor General is there, the minister needs to move.
Look at the context. We have a by-election.
So you're making allegations about which we have no foundation.
I'm saying that this is urgent and decisive. Urgent, very urgent.
Why? Because the PNP held a press
conference. No. There is the by-election. There is this budget presentation, which is supposed to be a big thing with all the goodies. And now we have him firing a minister that nobody's talking about his budget presentation anymore. We're here talking about what? The firing of a minister. It must have been very serious for the Prime Minister to take this drastic step. He did not take it with Wheatley.
Hold on. Let me bring in Robert Morgan. Robert Morgan?
Yes, John.
Initial... Dr. Ashley is suggesting, and Daniel Archer also raised the issue about the difference in treatment. Because Wheatley was almost coddled, I met with Dr. Wheatley, we had a discussion, and he agreed that it would be better for him to step aside. This is an entirely different tone here. So Ashley is saying it must be serious.
I think the public demands of the Prime Minister that he function in a particular way as it relates to serious issues of governance.
They weren't demanding that when Wheatley was involved?
I'm answering. The reality of it is that the country is changing and the people are demanding more accountability from their leaders. The Prime Minister himself made a commitment when he was being inaugurated about accountability. And persons have criticized us in the past that we have not fulfilled the promises we've made as it relates to demonstrating, even perceptively to the people, that we are going to ensure accountability and probity in governance. So I think that in this case, the Prime Minister probably was very aware of the requirements being placed on him by the public, the requirements being placed on him by civil society, and the expectation that people have that where there are issues or there are questions of impropriety which rise to a particular level, that action must be taken to ensure that confidence continues in the government.
Reasonable, Dr. Roper?
Well, the Prime Minister's explanation would perhaps account for why Royal Reid is leaving the cabinet. It would not account for why he's leaving the Senate.
The Prime Minister did not make that decision, sir.
What it indicates to me is not dissimilar to what Paul Ashley has said. That is, the matter is of a nature that is that personally suggests that the person holding the office is no longer or is at risk of being disqualified from that office. And we have to start there. We have to start with the fact that this is not just different in relation to what happened with Angela Wheatley, but he has taken a step further, not just removing him administratively, but removing his position as a member of the Parliament, as a member of the Senate. That to me, is significant.
Except the Prime Minister has no such power.
He said that I have requested and received. That's what his statement says.
If you read the statement
The
carefully.
statement says, and I'm not going to dance between
I requested and received Minister Reid's resignation. Minister Reid has also resigned from the Senate. The point I'm just making, just to be clear, just before you continue,
so his resignation
is that
from
he
the
can
Senate
always
is
ask Royal Reid to resign. If he asks Royal Reid to resign, or anybody to resign from the cabinet and they refuse, he can't fire them. If he asks them to resign from the Senate and they refuse, he can't do anything.
Except the Prime Minister knows what Minister Reid also knows, the nature of the charges or the allegations against him. But I want to go on to say something else.
There are no charges.
There are
no charges. No, I need to draw this back. I need to draw this back because you're all going very, very close to the line here if you're not over the line. There are no charges at this point. We're hearing allegations, we're hearing of investigations, and I would suggest we wait until we hear the outcome of those allegations before we start drawing conclusions about any kind of unlawful activity.
The conclusions are there in the public domain, and it is regretted.
Fine, but let's not do them on this program.
Atmosphere of these kinds of misuse of public funds and the allegation of misuse of public funds, that it takes announcements from ministers or government.
Hold that thought for me. I'm at the break.
Do not have this kind of robust situation where there is investigation, where we can count on the Fourth Estate to do us a better service than we are enjoying.
All right, we're going to have to go to the break. We're back in a moment.